Hi everyone, welcome to the channel. I'm Snow, and in today's video, let's go over Kvare. He's one of the coolest looking characters we've had for a long time now. He also happens to be the father of Sophia, which is one of those interesting parts about his backstory. Kvare is considered to be a top-tier, strong magical DPS character that excels at debuffs. In fact, he's often referred to as the king of debuffs. So in this video, let's go over his skill build as well as his skill and equipment setups. So let's start with his trait skill. It's called roster, also referred to as list, and the primary component of his trait skill is his special mechanic roster. Roster is basically an attack that automatically activates at the end of Kvare's turn, but you can also actively use that skill up to 2 times per round. So you can get the roster debuff on a number of enemies per round. And it's a debuff that at the start of the turn, it inflicts 2 random level 2 debuffs on the target for 2 turns. Those level 2 debuffs include decreases to attack, critical rate, physical defense, magic defense, and healing block. And when roster ends, or the target is attacked and enters a dying state, Kvare immediately summons an assassin to attack that enemy character, dealing 100% of Kvare's magic attack as piercing damage. Then it removes roster. The roster debuff cannot be dispelled or immunized. So roster is his unique skill mechanic, and you're going to see this throughout his trait skill. So with that out of the way, let's start with the first section of his trait skill. So when roster is removed from an enemy target, it increases Kvare's attack and defense by 5%, and this can go up to 20%, and it lasts until the end of battle. These effects also can't be immunized or dispelled. In addition, at the start of the turn, it casts roster on the closest enemy without roster within 5 tiles around Kvare. This first section of his trait skill isn't affected by star level, so he has all of these abilities at base star level. The second section of his trait skill, on the other hand, does get impacted by star level. So for this first part, he's getting some nice boosts to both HP and magic attack, and it goes all the way to 15% max at 5 stars. This starts off as a 3% boost at base star level, and you get an additional 3% boost at each star level. So at 2 stars, it's 6%, at 3 stars, it's 9%, and so on. So he has some nice built-in stat boosts in his trait skill. He also gains an additional skill called roster, which I've gone over already. This is an additional skill that he'll have available to him at the start of every turn. So in addition to the 3 skills you have equipped, this roster skill will also appear next to those skills. Roster is an instant skill that inflicts roster and life loss equal to 60% of Kvare's magic attack on enemies without roster, and the debuffs will last for 3 turns. In other words, you can only use roster on enemies that don't have roster applied to them already. The amount of life loss inflicted is affected by Kvare's star level. So at base star level, it'll only be 30%. At 3 stars, it increases to 40%. At 4 stars, it's 50% and reaches the maximum of 60% at 5 stars. The number of times the roster skill can be used also increases. It starts as 1 time per round at base star level, and at max star level, you can use this 2 times per round. This next part of the trait skill is added at 3 stars. So when using the skill roster for the first time each turn, it refunds the consumed energy. The roster skill costs 2 energy to use. So at 3 stars, you only get 1 energy refunded, and at 5 stars, you get the full amount refunded. But that refund's only for the first time you use that skill. So you'll have to pay attention to how much energy he has, especially if you want to use some of his other skills. He also starts with a skill called Conviction, and this is a single target attack that deals piercing damage, dealing 100% of his magic attack as life loss, which is a debuff where the enemy will lose a certain amount of HP at the end of each turn. It also inflicts move down 1, which reduces movement by 1 tile, and speed down 2, which decreases speed by 100, and these debuffs are applied to the enemy target for 2 turns. If the target's also inflicted with roster, it dispels all of their buffs before attacking, and additionally deals damage equal to 100% of Kvare's magic attack. and the duration of life loss for this skill is reduced by 1 turn. This is actually a really good skill because it's a very powerful single target attack. So it's a very viable skill to use. In fact, it's actually used in one of his recommended skill builds. So it's an extremely nice skill for him to start off with. But he also has a lot of amazing skills in his skill tree. So at level 1, we have a support skill and a passive. We'll start with the passive first. It's called Eclipse, also called Unforgettable Erosion. And with this passive, at the end of the turn, it locks onto one random enemy within 3 tiles of Kvare and inflicts 2 random level 1 attribute debuffs and life loss equal to 40% of his magic attack for 2 turns. This isn't a bad skill, but his other option at rank 1 is one of his primary skills. This skill is called Will of Victory, also called Winning of Intention. And there's a lot to go through with this one skill, but we're going to go over all of it one step at a time, because this skill turns into a bunch of other skills that could be chained together. So at base level, Will of Victory is a support skill, and it's also an instant skill that grants potential burst to an ally target for 2 turns. Potential burst is a buff that will grant the target increased attack by 20% and increased defense by 40%, as well as an immunity to attribute debuffs. And after you cast Will of Victory, the skill switches to Flaming Winds. This is part of what they're calling Kvare's collection. So Will of Victory will basically cycle through 6 different skills, and you can use each of them 1 time per battle. We're going to go through each of the skills individually, but the skills do cycle in a particular order, and that's the order you're allowed to use them. So you can't just skip to one of the other skills or pick and choose. This is not a decision skill. It simply cycles through these 6 skills. You'll see what I mean as we go over each of the skills. So after you use Will of Victory, the skill will switch to Flaming Winds. And this skill can be used immediately after using Will of Victory, so it can be used on the same turn. Flaming Winds is an AoE fire attack that deals 60% damage to enemies within range and inflicts 2 stacks of ignition, which is a life loss type of debuff. So at the end of the turn, the enemy will lose HP equal to 25% of the sum of the caster's physical attack plus their magic attack. And after casting Flaming Winds, the skill switches to another skill called Fortune of All. This skill can't be used immediately. You'll have to wait till Kvare's next turn to be able to use it. So Fortune of All is a support skill that's also an instant skill, and this recovers all energy of the target ally. And after casting this skill, the skill switches to another skill called Chill of Ocean, which can be used immediately after using the Fortune of All skill. Chill of Ocean is a magical attack that deals 100% ice AoE damage to all enemies within a cross-shaped range within 1 tile of the target. It also inflicts Frostbite, which lasts for 2 turns. Frostbite is a life loss debuff, and at the end of the turn, the enemies inflicted with Frostbite will lose HP equal to 50% of the sum of the caster's physical attack plus their magic attack. After casting Chill of Ocean, the skill switches to a skill called Golden Power. Again, you'll have to wait until Kvare's next turn to use this new skill. Golden Power is a support skill that's an instant skill, and this recovers the HP of the target. Again, after casting this skill, the skill switches to the final skill in the cycle, Wrath of Thunder, and you can use this immediately after using Golden Power. Wrath of Thunder is a single target magical attack that deals 180% damage. It dispels all buffs on the target before attacking, and it immediately triggers roster, as well as all DOT effects on the target after attacking. So any DOT effects on the target, including Scorch, Infection, Life Loss, Stigmata, and Corrosion, will all be triggered. So once you use Wrath of Thunder, the cycle of all of these skills is over, and you can't use any of these skills again. It will leave the Wrath of Thunder icon on the screen where the skill is, but it will have a 0 over it. I also want to note, all of the support skills in Kvare's collection can't be used on him. You can target your allies, but you can't target Kvare. I think you can see why Will of Victory is one of his primary skills. So at rank 1, you definitely want to pick up Will of Victory. Taking Will of Victory on the skill tree also gives you a 3% HP boost, which is really important for one of his other skills. At rank 3, we have a healing skill and a passive. First, we have a healing skill called Kvare's Gift, and this heals the target for 40% of Kvare's magic attack, and causes the target to share 50% of the damage taken by the character. Single share does not exceed 70% of Kvare's max HP, and this effect lasts for 2 turns. It also can't be dispelled or immunized. If the target is an enemy, it inflicts stun for 1 turn. If the target is an ally, it grants them increased attack 2, which increases physical attack and magic attack by 20%, damage increase 2, which increases damage by 20%, and damage reduction 2, which decreases damage taken by 20%. And all of these buffs will last for 2 turns. This skill does have an extreme limitation and can only be used up to 1 time per battle. His other option at rank 3 is called Victory Before Battle, also called Win First. And this skill is a passive, where each time one enemy with roster is defeated in battle, Kvare recovers 20% HP and 1 energy. He'll also gain 2 random level 2 buffs for 2 turns. The buffs include increased attack, crit rate, physical defense, magic defense, movement, healing, and immune to attribute debuff. This skill is great because it gives Kvare some self-sustain, and the energy recovery lets him use his skills more frequently. That includes using the roster skill to apply roster to more enemies, which obviously would help this passive activate more frequently every time one of those enemies are defeated. So this skill synergizes very well with Kvare's trait skill. So at rank 3, it's recommended to take Victory Before Battle. At rank 5 are the reaction skills. First we have Badge of Protection, also called Sanctuary Emblem. With this reaction skill, after being hit by an AoE attack, all allies within 2 tiles will receive a shield equal to 30% of Kvare's HP. The type of shield gain will correspond to the damage type. So if you take magic damage, you'll get a magic shield. If you take physical damage, you'll get a physical shield. And the shield will last for 2 turns. And when the character has a shield, the damage taken is reduced by 10%. Again, this skill is limited, so the shield of each type can only be triggered up to 1 time per battle. His other option at rank 5 is called Entrapping. And with this reaction skill, when hit by an active attack, the damage taken is decreased by 8%, and Kvare will also steal 2 random attribute debuffs from the target. Attribute debuffs include increased attack, damage, critical rate, critical damage, physical defense, magic defense, and damage reduction. This is Kvare's primary reaction skill, so it is recommended at rank 5 to pick up Entrapping. If you have extra Castalias, Sanctuary Emblem is a really good reaction skill to have as an option for certain situations. So it's worth picking up Sanctuary Emblem as well if you do have the Castalias. If not, make sure you pick up Entrapping, because that's the reaction skill you're going to use most of the time. At rank 7, we have 2 damage skills. In all honesty, neither of these skills are really important. You're not going to be using either of these skills. The only important factor here is that by taking Erosion, also called Arcane Toxins, you get 3% HP from the skill tree, which helps out with the shields produced with that reaction skill that we just talked about before. It also helps make Kvare be tankier as well. You can pause the video and read through the skills if you'd like. A lot of other characters actually have both of these skills, and you won't be using either of these skills with Kvare given the other skills in his skill kit. So at rank 7, it is recommended to pick up Arcane Toxins simply because of the HP boost. At rank 9, we have the basic attacks. First we have Infectious Attack. This is a basic attack that deals 80% magical damage, and it inflicts 1 stack of infection on the target. Infection is a debuff where the character loses a certain amount of HP after each turn. More stacks will deal higher damage, and this can stack up to 9 times. The stacks will also halve after taking effect. The other option at rank 9 is called Silencing Attack, and with this basic attack, it deals 80% magical damage, and it inflicts active skill block on injured targets before attacking, and the debuff will last for 2 turns. This is a similar situation to rank 7, For the skills, you could technically go either way, but if you take Silencing Attack, you'll get 3% HP, so it is recommended to take Silencing Attack simply because of the HP boost. And finally, at rank 11, both of these skills are really important. First, we have his ultimate skill called Enjoy the Rain, also called This is the Moment for Rain. This is a piercing damage attack that deals 40% of magic attack as piercing damage to all enemies within 6 tiles of the character. It also triggers and removes all DOT effects on the targets. If the targets have roster, it'll additionally inflict Piercing Vulnerable 2, which is a debuff that increases piercing damage taken by 20%. It also inflicts Passive Skill Block, Reaction Skill Block, and Isolate, which is a debuff where the character becomes immune to all allies' aura effects. And all of these debuffs will last for 2 turns. They'll also be applied before Kvare attacks. This attack will also trigger and remove all roster effects on the target after attacking. This is a very powerful skill with a large range, and it's also his ultimate skill and one of his primary skills, so it's definitely a must-get. His other skill at rank 11 is also really important, and it works alongside his ultimate skill. This is called Wither, also referred to as the End. With this passive skill, the skill This is a Moment for Rain, so his ultimate skill, will no longer trigger and remove DOT effects, but it also increases the damage of the skill by 100%, and when actively dealing damage with a non-instant skill, it additionally inflicts 60% of magic attack as life loss on the target for 1 turn. So this passive actually benefits all of his other skills that are non-instant skills as well, not just his ultimate skill. So this is a very useful passive. This passive skill is also used in combination with his ultimate skill, so at rank 11, it is recommended to pick up both of these skills. So for his skill setup, for his basic attack, you're going to have Silencing Attack. For his reaction skill, you're going to have Entrapping. And for his 3 skill slots, there's 2 recommended setups that you can use. Both of these setups have that ridiculous skill, Will of Victory. That's a skill that cycles through 6 different skills. That's just an extremely valuable skill to carry, because it gives you access to nice support skills, including healing and energy regeneration skills, as well as a bunch of damage dealing skills. This first skill setup, it's a really good single target attacking setup. Between Conviction with its single target damage, and the passive Victory before battle, which will give him some sustain and energy regeneration, as well as a lot of buffs that are very helpful. His second skill setup option is making use of his ultimate skill coupled with that passive Wither. This gives him access to both AoE and single target attacks, while also having access to support skills and increased damage. And of course, you can always mix and match the skills however you'd like. And as for his equipment, he does have a number of options for weapons. First is his signature weapon, Nightmare Puppet. This is made for him, obviously, so it's very good for him. It gives increases to his magic attack and HP. It also inflicts a number of debuffs as well. There are a number of free-to-play options you can use too. You can use something like Starry Sky. This increases HP and also gives increased magic attack based on your HP. You can also use Resentment Broom or Diffusing Prism. These will help increase the damage to your AoE attacks, but you should keep in mind he does have single target attacks, so make sure to consider what skills you're equipping with what weapons you're using. As for his trinket, your best option is Origin Hourglass. This will give him increases to physical attack and magic attack, as well as granting immunities against decreased movement and speed. As for the engravings, you can use Sword and Wand. This will give him attack and defense increases for every tile he moves, and this can go up to a 12% boost, and the effect will last until the start of the next turn. Another option is using Sword and Pentacle. This increases his attack and defense by 12% when he's unharmed. For engraving stats, you really want to aim for magic attack and health. As for his Tarot Whisper, you can use something like Devil. This is going to increase his damage for every character defeated on the battlefield. You can also use something like Emperor. This increases damage by 10% when attacking healthy enemies. and this damage increase works for both his single and AoE attacks. The Magician Tarot Whisper can also work, especially for his AoE skills, because he'll get increased damage by 8%, and then an additional 4% for every enemy hit, and that can go up to 12%. Kvare is a top-tier magical DPS character that excels at applying debuffs. The combination of his unique skill mechanic roster and the plethora of debuffs he has in his skill kit, including life loss, allows him to proficiently apply debuffs to enemies, which in turn provides a lot of passive damage. He also has a great combination of powerful single target and AoE attacks that let him further contribute even more damage for your team. His special skill, Will of Victory, grants access to a wide variety of powerful damage-dealing skills and valuable support skills for healing, energy regeneration, and offensive and defensive buffs. I do want to note a lot of his power is locked behind star level. He should be at least 3 stars or better, that way you can get access to his energy refund when using his roster skill. However, Kvare is absolutely a top-tier character who performs well as a powerful magical DPS and debuffer, so he's definitely worth building if you get him. Thank you so much for watching, don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you soon. Bye.